Coming up on Network Africa, over 130 persons feared drowned in a boat accident in Djibouti. Sudan academics call for more anti-government protests. And hundreds of Zimbabwean lawyers march for justice for people detained in jail after violent protests led to mass arrests. Hello and welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Teniola Shubowale. The UN Migration Agency says at least 28 people have died after two boats capsized off the coast of Djibouti. The incident occurred about 30 minutes after the overloaded boat set off in heavy seas from Godoria on Tuesday. One survivor reports that there were 130 people on his boat, but was not able to say how many passengers were on the other vessel. A rescue and recovery operation is currently ongoing. Djibouti has in recent years become a transit point for migrants heading to find work in the Arabian Peninsula. Sudanese security forces have detained the daughter of opposition leader Sadiq al-Mahdi. Her sister is quoted as saying two security vehicles arrived at Maryam Sadiq al-Mahdi's home on Wednesday morning and took her away. She's the deputy leader of the Umar party, headed by her 83-year-old father. Meanwhile, university lecturers in Khartoum have called for further anti-government protest. A planned sit-in in the main campus was announced after the authorities ordered the release of everyone who'd been detained during more than a month of demonstrations against President Omar al-Bashir. The lecturers have also published online a document calling for the peaceful transfer of power. Activists say that protests would continue because the underlying political and economic problems have not been resolved. Campaigners say that more than 1,000 protesters have been detained. Professor Bola Akinterinwa, Director General of the Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, joins us now to discuss more on this. Hello, sir. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
What do you make of this persistent protest rocking Sudan?
You see, it's a reflection of the fact that African leaders are generally insensitive to complaints. They don't bother much about the feelings of their citizens. I say this because you cannot understand why a strike that began end of last year, as far back as December 27, in which people were killed, journalists were killed, security officers were killed, and yet it's already a month, and the government is yet to find solution to it. And if you look at the genesis of the problem, it is simply because people were protesting the cost of just bread. So I think that at the end of the day, the mania of political governance in Africa needs a revisit. We really need not embark on violent strike, before answers are provided to general complaints. I think you can look at it. Don't think about Sudan alone. Look at the situation in Nigeria, whereby you have the ASU also on strike for long. I think that this is a terrible development in Africa.
Well, Professor, what's the appropriate response from the president? Like you mentioned, the protest started with them protesting against fuel hikes and bread and the prices of bread, but now it has led to the resignation, calling for the resignation of President Omar al-Bashir, who was ruled for almost 30 years. What should be his response? Do you see him possibly stepping down?
You see, it's part of the problem Africans have in terms of, for instance, his response. If an African leader can stay in power for 4 years and then renew it for another 4 years, and he has not succeeded in doing his best. Please, staying beyond 8 years is very nonsensical. In other words, why, after having stayed for decades in power, he has not been able to find a solution to self-reliant economy that is needed? I think that his approach by this time is to honorably just withdraw and allow better ideas in political governance to come in. This is al-Bashir, who under normal circumstances should have been given to the International Criminal Court for trial. But because of solidarity, African leaders themselves now decided to stay with him and cover him up. But we are not talking about economic survival at the level of the people. I believe that, look, please, if al-Bashir cannot solve the problem of bread and butter on the table, he should simply quit.
Do you see him doing that?
African leaders are not on record to give way with ease. It is only when they are pressured. Did you know that Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe had to be forced to leave? Do you know? Go to any African country as a case study. Who really wants to go? They do not always want to go. They will claim they are not interested in becoming president. But when they become president, you now have to force them out. So please, al-Bashir may not want to go with ease. The issue is that African people, when I say African people, I mean Nigerians, Ghanaians, Zimbabweans, South Africans, should come together and tell our leaders to please give way for new ideas. They should give way for better political governance. We are fed up with this old mania of governing Africa, which is creating problems. People die every day.
Well, Professor, over the weekend, the president said the protesters are trying to imitate the Arab Spring uprisings in Egypt. Do you share this opinion, and what exactly does this mean for the country?
What really is the problem with anybody taking a cue from what obtains elsewhere? Arab Spring, protests here and there. What is wrong if people are sharing ideas in a situation whereby they are looking for the betterment of their future? My concern is simply that, look, I want for the people of Africa, peace, rest of mind, security of education, security of the stomach, security of life and property. These are the issues. Now, please, let's look at what is happening currently in Venezuela. Now, in Venezuela, we now have a situation whereby the people are divided over their own future. You have the opposition leader who declared himself and is now being supported internationally. But to the extent now that the United States is now saying Venezuelan oil, all right, will be confiscated, it will not be paid for, just as a measure of pressure. Now come back to Sudan. Sudan, before the carving out of South Sudan out of it, black people were enslaved right from the 1950s to date. This al-Bashir never allowed the black people, Sudanese, all right, to survive. It was a major problem. So it was as a result of force majeure that he allowed South Sudan to have its independence. The international community pressured him. So when you look at it, when you have this problem now, People must look outside to get support for whatever they want. So I don't share the idea of allowing international community to come and intervene. But when you are compelled, when you don't have any solution, and you now have a sort of diktat in place, what do? Then you allow the situation to exist. So please, if the government is saying they are imitating what obtains elsewhere, in Egypt, what does it want the people to do? If, for instance, they cannot have peace in Sudan?
Yeah. Professor Bola Akinterinwa, so much to say on this issue. Thank you for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.